going on, everybody? Welcome to Sloppy Saturdays. And today we have a very special episode. It's actually my first guest on here. And not only that, it's somebody I recorded with time and time again. We are back. Welcome, Kenneth.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today to talk some NFL draft.
Yep, so that's what we're doing. We're going to go over pretty much each round of the NFL draft. Now, the reason why I did this too, I wanted another different opinion on the channel for this draft because I told them before we recorded, I've been talking about these players for 3 months. You guys know my opinion pretty much on every player, but I wanted just a different opinion as well. And plus, draft basically just ended. I think they're right now. They have like a couple more picks in the seventh, but draft pretty much is over. So we can go over the whole entire draft for you guys. Get this out right away. We're gonna go over the first round, even though I dedicated a first round episode and graded these picks. I want Ken's opinion on the first round. How could we go over a draft without going over the first round? And then we'll go highlight picks in the second, third, fourth, and so on. But before we get into anything, we got to talk about SHEDEUR Sanders because SHEDEUR Sanders has been ruining the draft for me. When we think about SHEDEUR Sanders, he was a top 10 pick a day before the draft. He slides all the way to the 144th pick. And like I said, the annoying thing about the SHEDEUR Sanders thing is there's so many talented players in each round. And after the first round, the NFL draft just became for fans. Where is SHEDEUR getting picked? Not looking at each player. It's just been where is SHEDEUR getting picked, where is SHEDEUR getting picked. He finally goes today in the fifth round, 144th pick. I have never seen anything like this. I've never seen a fall like this. I don't know about you. I have never seen a fall this far in a draft. But I'm not surprised at anything in sports anymore. We saw a couple of other shocking things this year throughout other sports, so nothing surprises me anymore. But going over SHEDEUR Sanders, do you have a reason that you think this happened?
I mean, I think there's like a couple of things. I know we've talked about it in our group chat. Maybe things that were said during the interviews, and I mean, the biggest reason I think it's because of Deion Sanders being his father. But yeah, I was really surprised by this. Leading up to the draft for months. It was he's going to be the second quarterback taken off the board. He could be taken as early as the top three. And then you start hearing that the Browns and the Giants probably will take, best player available, which the Browns will talk about it. They traded out and went to 5. And the Giants, of course, took Abdul Carter. But then not only did he slid it out of the first round. And I just couldn't believe it. And he ended up being, what was it, the 6th quarterback taken? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I believe so.
unbelievable. Yeah, that's unbelievable. And the Browns still ended up with him. Um, yeah, I think it's one of I mean, it's probably the biggest story to come out of the draft. It's the biggest surprise to come out of the draft. But now he's in a position where he has to earn his spot on the roster, which, going into the draft, I didn't think that was going to be a thing. I thought wherever he was going to end up, it was going to be in guarantee, but he's going to have to earn it. And I think he will earn it because you look at the quarterback room on the Browns, it's very interesting, to say the least. Um, but I think he will earn it, and then we'll see what happens, where it goes from there. But yeah, definitely the biggest surprise of the draft by far.
Not only that, he's like really gonna have to earn it because most likely 3 quarterbacks are only gonna make this roster, and they have 4 currently. And Dylan Gabriel got selected also in this draft, 2 rounds ahead of him. So it's really gonna be an uphill battle for him, which is just like insane to think about. Like we said, this is a guy that most people had in their top 10 for 3 months. I just can't think of a reason why this happened. I just feel like there's been players Baker Mayfield, Johnny Manziel that's been cocky. We've seen players in sports that had dads and outside issues and stuff. I just feel like if the talent is there, it's a business and all these organizations care about is winning. Unless it's something just like completely out of left field, if you got somebody with criminal issues or whatever, but just like really no true explanation why he fell this much is like one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
And there's
And
definitely stuff that's gonna probably leak out,
I think
in
so.
the coming weeks. But, yeah, it's really interesting. And like I said, I think he could definitely earn his spot with the Browns. I mean, I think the only quarterback right now, like Deshaun Watson, you could take out of it, right? Because he's going to be hurt. I think Joe Flacco is a guarantee to make the roster just to have that veteran presence. But when you're competing with Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, like that's your competition right there. And I think there's no reason that Shador Sanders can't, you know, beat those guys out to make the team. So
No, yeah, 100%. It's gonna be weird. I think definitely, in my opinion, I think probably Joe Flacco's the odd man out, which would be crazy because they just signed him. But I don't know. I just don't think you let Dylan Gabriel go, who you drafted in the third round, like right away, and then Kenny Pickett you also traded for. It's gonna be very interesting, and it's just interesting that the Browns took him too, like after he had this stain, because the Browns we know from past history they take chances on guys that have stains on them. So that wasn't a shock. Out of everything, that wasn't a shock, but yeah, one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I obviously wanted to get that out of the way because it's just a tremendous topic taking over whole draft. Now let's highlight all the other players in the NFL draft that are also very talented. So, like I said, we're going to go over the first round. We're going to get Ken's opinion on these. You'll probably hear mine again, and we'll keep it going. So, the first pick in the draft, obviously, Cam Ward. Cam Ward just had an incredible story when we talk about a guy that was a 0 star going to Incarnate Word. Then he transferred to Washington State. Then after Washington State, the season before that, he was going to enter the NFL draft. He was going to be a third, fourth rounder. He still let me go back to school, transfer again, and he goes and the number one pick to Tennessee. I mean, we're talking about a guy that literally went from bottom to top. I said I wasn't the biggest fan of this pick because, like we've discussed, you had two blue chip prospects behind him, but Tennessee definitely put themselves in a spot where everybody knew they were taking a quarterback and it just had to happen, right? Because they didn't do anything in the offseason to address this position. And obviously, after we started Will Levis for a year and a half and not having significant draft capital, they were going to move on from him. What do you like about this pick? What do you don't like?
yeah, I mean, obviously you're more of an expert when it comes to the guys because you got, between you and our other friends, you guys are, religiously watching college football. But yeah, I mean, this was the probably the easiest pick of the draft to predict. And even we were saying it when we were out watching the draft the other night, like the draft was really going to start at pick 2, and it really did once the Browns traded out. But yeah, that's for weeks now leading up to the draft, you were hearing that they were falling in love with Cam Ward, and that was a position that they feel can be upgraded with this pick. And like you said, Will Levis was a big disappointment. They were hoping that with the new regime and a couple of offseason acquisitions, veteran wide receivers that they brought in, that maybe he would take that next step, but that just didn't happen. So now they get their guy, and we'll see what happens. And he goes into a division that's not a gauntlet like some of the other divisions that we'll talk about. The AFC South, I mean, the Texans are the best team, but I feel like that division is still, can still be competitive. So, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that was probably the easiest pick to predict of the night.
Definitely for sure. He's not going into the hardest situation when you look at divisions, but the team definitely still has some work to do. And it's going to be interesting to see if he's that plug and play type of QB or if it's going to take him a year, year and a half to get his feet under his belt and put good production in. At number 2, another shocking thing of this draft, Jaguars Jaguars get Travis Hunter. They trade up with the Browns. Now, I remember as we were in the car going to where we were going to go to watch the draft, there was rumors that the Browns were going to trade his pick, and I remember the first thing we all said is, "You're trading a blue chip prospect away, and what are you going to go back to the 15th, 20th overall pick in this year's draft and get first rounds on top of it?" They actually only moved down 3 spots. They get another first round on top of it, and they get a second and some other details in the trade. But the main thing is they trade up for the blue chip prospect Travis Hunter, which I think is super interesting when you look at Travis Hunter. Very different from the other blue chip prospect, Abdul Carter, where we've seen players like Abdul Carter work in the NFL. Travis Hunter is just a whole different scenario, something we haven't seen before. And for the city in Jacksonville, a team not like 3, 4 years ago drafted one of the most polarizing prospects we've ever seen in Trevor Lawrence. Now adding Travis Hunter. Again, going to be interested in how he's used. I don't hate the trade for both sides. I think Cleveland got a decent amount of value for him, and I think you can never really hate a team for trading up to get a guy like Travis Hunter as well. So I think both sides really did well on this. And again, only time really pans out on these trade night trades. Going to be how do the players in the trade actually develop in the NFL? Where as a current day trade, you could already see who won and lost. We don't know because we never seen any of these players in the NFL or anything that the Browns are going to pick further on here. Rumored Travis Hunter is going to play a little more offensive defense. I think they're trying to justify the Trevor Lawrence contract. What do you think about this whole thing?
Yeah, so I agree. I think when you look at both, from both teams' perspectives, there's a lot to like. I mean, with the Jaguars, you get, a top player from this draft. And then with the Browns, I mean, I really like that they're getting a first round pick next year. So they could turn that into a really good player. But, obviously we'll have to wait and see when that happens. But yeah, I mean, this is all about trying to surround Trevor Lawrence with as much talent as possible. Now he's going through his third head coach, which you know you don't like to hear that, but that's just how the Jaguars have been since he was drafted, and it's been underwhelming. And I don't think all of it is his fault. I think part of it is, like I said, it's coaching, and also he's also gotten hurt. He's been behind an offensive line that is not very good. So that's the other thing that you hope is better um, in 2025 is he has better protection. But yeah, I mean, this is a home run pick. You line him up opposite of Brian Thomas Jr., who had a very good year. So I like that. You're hoping Trevor Lawrence can take that next step and be put in the same conversation as some of the other elite quarterbacks in the NFL. So I like the pick a lot. And like I said, there from both sides, you do like it. Like I said, with the Browns getting the first rounder next year.
Going to be interesting to see, especially for a team that's always in the top of the draft, like the Jacksonville Jaguars. They draft a Trevor Lawrence who was, again, talked about like he's God going into the draft, one of the best quarterback prospects anybody's seen at that time. And you draft Travis Hunter, who is something we've never seen before. So it seems like the year of these picks, they're making the right picks, but again, we'll see how they develop them and how they pan out. Number three, your New York Giants take Abdul Carter. I already told everybody my stance on this numerous times. I thought he was the best player in the draft. I said it time and time again. What he could do as a linebacker, as a end. Anytime I watched a college football game, I thought he was the best player on the field. And there's been players like him. Obviously, that defensive line is going to be absolutely loaded. You could argue from day one it's going to be up there for the best in the league with Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, him, Kayvon Thibodeau. Now they picked up the fifth-year option. So very interesting there. I obviously think it's a home run. I think they got the best player in the draft at 3. What do you think as a Giants fan?
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I did want Travis Hunter, but this was the next best thing. Even last year, like going into the year, I was excited for the Giants defensive line when they traded for Brian Burns. Now, obviously, the Giants were not great last year, but that was one of the few strengths of the team. And hopefully now, when you add this generational talent in Abdul Carter, that could just take this defense to the next level. And they also added some defensive linemen in free agency. They also drafted another D tackle in this draft too. So I'm really excited. Because the Giants for years, it's been a long time since they've been able to have a pass rush, and hopefully this is the year where it could really take off. And you have him along with Brian Burns, with Dexter Lawrence, and they picked up Kayvon's fifth-year option, so he's going to stick around. I like the Giants on defense, and they play in a division with some really good quarterbacks and some really good teams in general. So they're going to need to get after the quarterback, and hopefully, with Abdul Carter, who can do a lot of different things for you, you can line him on the outside, on the inside. So yeah, I really like this pick, and hopefully this is the start of the Giants hopefully turning it around this year, which is going to be tough, but we'll see. But you got to be excited.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for them too, like we said in mocks and throughout the whole draft process, they were talking about getting a quarterback. They were talking about getting a blue chip prospect. I think they actually hit all cylinders and they got both. We're obviously going to talk about the Jackson Dart pick when it comes up, but I think they really filled everything they wanted to do in this draft. Not only that, they definitely have an identity on defense, like you said, and with a guy like Malik Neighbors on offense is going to be one of the best offensive players in the league for years to come. Hopefully, it doesn't take too long to make that offense productive around him. So definitely think the Giants made the right pick there. We got Will Campbell at 4. I feel like there was definitely a teardrop from 2, 3 to 4. Um, Definitely wouldn't say Will Campbell was a blue chip prospect, but definitely what the Patriots needed. I mean, when you looked at Drake May, he did play extremely well for what he was given, but at the same time, how well could you do when you're not winning a game and you're running for your life? They draft Will Campbell. They definitely needed offensive line help. My only thing with this pick, again, there was a tier break. I would have liked them to trade back, but not only that, Will Campbell's also rumored to be a guard in the NFL, which is tough. You're taking a guard instead of a tackle. I feel like tackles you normally build your offensive line off of. Guards are like additions. But again, I can't really fault them. I don't hate the pick because again, it's exactly what they needed. It was the best offensive lineman there, and maybe they just couldn't trade out for it. Maybe they weren't getting the offers they thought they would receive.
Yeah, not really much to add. I mean, I think going into the draft, I think along with more playmakers on that side of the ball, I think, offensive line was probably their, well, not probably, but definitely was their top priority. So yeah, they took best lineman available. And like you said, he could transition to guard. Um, so we'll see. But yeah, that was definitely the biggest need for the Patriots going in, to try to upgrade this offense. And hopefully, Drake May takes that next step forward next year.
At number 5, they go Mason Graham with the Browns after that trade. I think the value there was perfect. Mason Graham was a guy that pretty much everybody had mocked in the top 10. I think you're taking a significant position. You're taking a D lineman. You're adding that now, parlaying it with Myles Garrett, who you did end up signing an extension. There was definitely questions around that in the offseason, but your defense gets a lot more scarier. And not only that, Browns defense has been solid throughout the years. It's really been their offensive question marks at quarterback. But again, I really like this pick. I think you're taking the right value guy there, and you got stuff on top of it. Like I said, I'm on both sides of the trades for now and just seeing how it pans out for these teams and how these players develop.
Yeah, I mean, leading up to the draft, you were hearing if the Browns, took Abdul Carter, you'd have him lining opposite of Myles Garrett. Well, now you have someone lining up on the inside, that could get after the quarterback. So, yeah, no, that's another good pick by the Browns. And yeah, I agree. The defense has been the strength of the team. It's just, they've been really looking for that consistency on offense, and they just really haven't had that mainly because of the quarterback position, their quarterback situation. So, yeah, I was a fan of that pick too. So yeah, Browns defense got better.
Now they got 4 quarterbacks to work with. Maybe one pops off, but
Yeah,
it's not looking
exactly.
likely. At number 6, we have Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders. Now, I really did not like this fit. As much as I love Ashton Jeanty as a player, and again, you're talking about a guy at the running back position, outside of Saquon Barkley, I really don't remember a guy as hype coming in, at least in our generation. And for Ashton Jeanty, the reason why I don't like this pick, we say it all the time. You take a running back with a top 10 pick, it's a luxury type pick. It's if you have a lot of holes figured out. I don't think the Raiders are ready to contend, especially with the 3 quarterbacks they have in their division and just the holes they have. I feel like when you look at Ashton Jeanty, very similar to guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, these running backs usually pop their first 3 to 4 years. I don't think the Raiders are going to be at their peak as a team when Ashton Jeanty reaches his. So I don't hate the pick because, again, you're a bad team. You're getting a great player. But again, the position and where you're at, running back's a little bit of a luxury to me.
Yeah, when I think about the Raiders, when I was watching Pete Carroll's press conference and the things he was saying, when he was introduced as the next head coach, like he wanted to accelerate this rebuild. So, I mean, however you want to look at it, I mean, they went out and they did upgrade the quarterback position by getting Geno Smith because, yeah, the quarterback situation with the Raiders last couple of years has not been great. And Geno, like, yes, he's kind of tailed off the last couple of years, but I still think he is at least a competent starter in the league still. So, you bring him in. Obviously, Brock Bowers last year was really good in his rookie season. But outside of that, I mean, yeah, Jacoby Myers you have, but he's not, a number one receiver. They just needed more playmakers to this offense, and they were not very good at running the ball last year. So this was a, best player available type pick, a splash move. And yeah, it just comes at the expense of, yeah, look at the division they play in, the quarterbacks, the teams that they play in. Right now you look at them as the last place team in the division. That's just how you look at it. But I did have in the one mock draft that I did have him going to the Raiders just because, they really were not good at running the football last year. And if he fell to him, it looked like that's what they were going to end up doing. And that's what happened. So, yeah, they're going to be better at running the football in 2025, but it might not lead to a lot more wins. So that's my thoughts on that pick.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think they tried to excel as rebuild. I mean, you sign a veteran player, and I'm not the biggest Geno Smith guy, but he definitely isn't at the bottom of quarterbacks in the league. He definitely is a competent starter. And you have Brock Bowers, you have Ashton. That might be enough to make an offense work. I mean, you could argue after last year, Brock Bowers is the best tight end in the league. I know the veterans kind of tailed off a little bit at that position. And then you have Ashton Jetty again, who we expect to produce pretty much immediately in the NFL. Like me and you just said, I just think the quarterbacks in that division and the teams are just going to be too tough for them. Again, like they could have much more talent. It might still be tough for them with those three quarterbacks. At number 7, Jets go Ahmad Membu. I really didn't have a problem or too much of an opinion on this pick either way. I told you I would have liked them to go pass catcher with Tetsuo McMillan. I thought he was the best player available. I think Garrett Wilson is really the only pass catching weapon they have on that offense right now. And then I would have been fine with Tyler Warren as well. I know that's what a lot of people thought. That was basically the hot rumor at that pick. But in the back of my head, even as a Jets fan, I had a feeling they were going to go Amron Membu because it's just a Jets pick. Like they always go boring offensive line pick.
Yeah,
But
they did the same thing last year.
like I don't mind. The value is there. He's going to play tackle, try to improve the offensive line. Then again, they've been trying to improve the offensive line for 20 years.
It's like the Giants.
So
It's a
again,
common theme.
I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'm obviously super high on Tetsuo McMillan. Would have liked a fun pick, but again, you have a new quarterback. Guess you want to build the offensive line. Don't know how long that quarterback's going to stay there. That's besides the point. But I'm Ron
Yeah,
Member.
that could be a whole separate show talking about the Jets quarterback situation. But yeah, I mean, I like the pick too. They did the same thing last year, right? Because I remember when we were watching it at our friend's house. I don't think you were there when we were, at the Jets pick, but um, you know, our friends wanted Brock Bowers and they took Olufashinu with that pick. And you know what? Look, Tyron Smith didn't pan out. He retired, and it looks like Fashinu is going to be a good player. So you have him, and then you have Membu line up opposite of him. And you know what? The Jets are trying to, build up the trenches. And like you said, Dami, and like I said, it seems like the New York teams have been trying to do that for years. So I don't hate the approach. It's the smart pick, but you wanted to see more playmakers added to the offense, obviously more pass catchers more specifically. But again, it's a smart pick. And, hopefully this is the year that both New York teams have stable offensive lines.
Yeah, again, maybe they didn't go pass catcher because they didn't figure that was as significant of a need. We know Fields, he's definitely going to be rushing the ball a lot. Might not be as much of a passing offense with him and Brees Hall in the backfield. Maybe that's more of a need for them. At number 8, usually how Jets picks go for me, the player I like goes right after or right before. Tetsuo McMillan goes to the Panthers. I absolutely love this pick. I thought he was a top 4 player coming into the draft. I thought he was that one player, again, outside Shedeur Sanders now, that hype was really falling off towards the draft. I was hearing a lot of negative things towards him dropping. I feel like there's always 1, 2, 3 players in the draft that as the draft process goes on, a lot of analysts start to overthink it. Even though somebody like Tetsuo McMillan was rumored to be in the top 10 all year, I think when you have a young quarterback like Bryce Young that you saw a pretty good end into the season out of, even though I was never high on him, I have no problem rooting for the guy. And then you add a weapon to that offense to try to help him take that next step. I think it's a great move. I think, again, a 6'4 guy reminds me a lot of Mike Evans, T. Higgins, a guy that's going to be on the outside as an X receiver and just going to be physical and get open that way. I think it was just a home run, like I said, to pair him with Bryce Young to try to get the most out of Bryce Young. Like we said with the Jaguars, a lot of quarterbacks that have been taken in the top 3, 5 that are young, that have left a little bit on the table, feel like the teams are trying to justify their pick right there and try to get the most out of them. What do you think of Tetsuo McMillan?
Yeah, no, the same exact thing really is what you said. And this was, again, one of the picks that I did pick correctly in my mock draft. But of course, once we get out of the top 10, that's when everything falls apart there. But yeah, didn't really hear a lot about him, going into the draft. I mean, obviously, like Travis Hunter, plays both corner and receiver, but just sticking to a pure, wide receiver standpoint, yeah, like he was supposed to be the top receiver taken, and that's what ended up happening if you're going to exclude, Travis Hunter. But yeah, I mean, Bryce Young, it was a tough year for him last year just because with the benching, but then when he came back in, he looked like a different guy, which I think is very encouraging for the Panthers, and hopefully that translates on the field next year. But you go out and you get him another playmaker. I feel like the Panthers, that was a position, like other than maybe addressing the defensive side of the ball, that was definitely a position of need, and they went out and did that. And let's see if he could take that next step.
Yeah, I agree with you on like not hearing much about him or wide receivers in this draft. I feel like at least the last couple of years, wide receivers have been like this hot type of picks. I mean, when you look last year, when you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, you look at previous years, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, like there's always a loaded wide receiver class. Seems like it always just seems like that's the most loaded position in the NFL. And this year, like the hype has died down. Tetro McMillan was the one that I had going in the first round. In my mock draft, I actually only had one wide receiver going, but yeah, the hype just died down that position this year. At number 9, Saints go with Kelvin Banks. Saints are just in like absolute hell. Just have no cap space at all, negative cap space, and they go Kelvin Banks. I really kind of didn't like this pick because if they were going to go offensive line, I feel like Armand Membu, Will Campbell were the guys. They missed out on them. I feel like Kelvin Banks was a tier below them. And again, whether they could have traded up or went in a different direction, I just feel like the value you're getting at this pick is a little lower. But again, positional need for them. They do have a lot of positional needs. And again, with Kellen Moore as their head coach, they, they're going to be a
Yeah,
rough team in the
he's got a
NFL. But
he's got his hands full. He's got his hands full, and hopefully the Saints give him some time to try to like build this team back up again. But yeah, I mean, this offensive line for the Saints, like you go back to like, the tail end of Drew Brees' career, and like it was solid, but then, guys got older, guys left in free agency or retired. So yeah, they had to fix that. And, again, position of need. We'll see who's playing behind center for them next year because, the Derek Carr injury news. So yeah, not really too much thoughts on that. They have a lot of holes.
yeah, I didn't really like the Saints draft at all. We're going to talk about who they drafted under center as well, but I thought they had a really bad draft. At 10, we go with Coastal Loveland. Now, this was the most interesting pick to me and like how I feel about it because I really do like Coastal Loveland as a player. I think he's going to succeed in the NFL. I think he's a traditional type tight end. Can obviously run back. Can obviously run block. He was on Michigan for the last 3 years, and they have been a rush heavy team. And I feel like throughout college, he hasn't really been able to show how good of a route runner and pass catcher he is, just because again they're a run first kind of team. And I feel like somebody who could run block, could run traditional routes. I feel like he's going to succeed. The only problem I have with this pick is, again, Tyler Warren was the guy that we thought was going to go over him. I don't even have a problem them selecting him over Tyler Warren. It's just where he was selected. I feel like if they would have let Coastal Loveland go, whether they wanted to trade back or trade back in, I feel like he would have been there at 20. I just feel like the value at 10, I didn't think he was a top 10 player. But again, I do like the player. I do think he's going to succeed. Um, they're really doing the most for Caleb Williams as well. They added stuff to the offensive line. They obviously drafted Roman Dunze in the first round last year. They have DJ Moore. You draft Colton Loveland. You draft another weapon in the next round. Like they're really trying to make sure he succeeds. What do you think about Colton Loveland in the pick?
Yeah, that was one that I wasn't like super in love with. Um, no pun intended. But yeah, like I felt like maybe they could have been a team that could have traded back. I was also thinking maybe, I mean, I don't know if you would have, well, then again, the Raiders did it, but running back could have been a position they could have addressed had they traded back. And have that similar approach to how Ben Johnson had over in Detroit with Montgomery and Gibbs. You could have had Swift and whoever they would have decided to do there. Or maybe even edge rusher too. Maybe address the defensive side of the ball, have someone opposite of Montez Sweat. I didn't know if tight end was going to be, position they were going to go with, and that's what they ended up doing. So that was probably one that I was like, I'm not really a huge fan of it. But it adds another pass catcher for Caleb. So
I think a lot of it too is like they were rumored to go for Genti this whole time. Genti went before they picked. They were rumored that offensive line was going to be another need. Three offensive linemen go before they pick. I just think they got in just a rough spot in the position in the draft. Sometimes all that matters is your position in the draft too. When everybody wants goes in front of you, you kind of go into a bind. So that's that pick there. Next up, don't really have too much opinion on this pick. Michael Williams out of Georgia. He goes to the 49ers. 49ers kind of a weird team. Felt like yesterday they were just a contender, an NFC Championship Super Bowl team every single year. Last year, again, they dealt with injuries. Their team's getting a lot older. They have a young quarterback. It's just a very weird situation, and they have their coach, obviously. Um, I thought they could have went in a different spot than edge rusher. I do like Michael Williams though. Don't really have too much an opinion on this pick. Thought it was just like an average pick. What do you think?
yeah, I mean, when you look at what they did in general, I think four out of the five first picks for them were all on the defense. You know, that defense kind of needed some revamping because you had some guys leaving free agency like Dre Greenlaw and Ufanga, Charvarius Ward. There was a lot of guys that left. So they're trying to, like you said, they're getting a little bit older. So they're trying to, have an overhaul there with younger players. So I actually like that approach for them. I feel like the offense, you could probably address well, we'll talk about their picks later, but I feel like with the offense there, I don't think there was really any pressing need at that point. I think I had no problem with them going defense to start off, and you pair them up with Nick Bosa.
Yeah, I didn't really have too strong of opinion really either way. Um, at 12, Tyler Booker, absolutely hate this pick. Thought it was horrible. Think a guard at 12 is just a rough pick on value to take. I didn't really expect him to go in the top 12 as well. There's like nothing I like about this pick, honestly. I thought they took him way ahead of where he should have went. I thought, like we were talking about with the Bears, I thought two, three offensive linemen went. I think Tyler Booker's in a complete different tier. Again, that got hurt. Maybe they're trying to shore up that offensive line. I had them going with Ted McMillan in my mock draft. He obviously didn't slide as well. Again, it's all about where people slide and stuff. Maybe they would have went a different offensive lineman, different playmaker if they went there. But I just think a guard at 12 is just like rough.
Yeah, I was thinking all along playmaker for Dallas because, the running game was not great last year. Rico Dowdle was their leading rusher and he leaves in free agency. I mean, they signed Miles Sanders and Javante Williams, which I don't think, you know, they're going to have a huge impact, but we'll see. This was just something they did to replace Zach Martin. Zach Martin retires, so they had to do that, and they, addressed the defensive line. I think with their second pick because Demarcus Lawrence left in free agency. But yeah, I was hoping for them to. Well, not really hoping as a Giant fan, but I was thinking like you go playmaker. Either running back or receiver, and they didn't do that with that pick. So
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I feel like they're going to be reaching either way. Obviously, Ashton Jeffy, Ted McMillan go before they were picking, and then if you go Matthew Golden and Mecca Buko, Marin Hampton, people would have said that was probably high for that player too as well. So either way, whatever they've done, I feel like they were reaching a little bit. If they would have went Tyler Warren, I think maybe that would have only been the only logical spot where a weapon could have went at its value. But Tyler Booker again, I really don't like this pick at all. At number 13, Kenneth Grant goes to the Dolphins. Dolphins defense was a little bit of a mess last year. So to get somebody to clog up that middle as a defensive tackle, I thought that was a good move. He did play on a loaded defense. He was a great duo with Mason Graham, Will Johnson. It's going to be interesting to see how he pans out for the Dolphins. Dolphins, another team, again, I feel like their peak was a year or two ago. I don't know how Tua is going to pan out after these injuries. And then Tyreek Hill obviously looked like he's taking a step back. So everything for the Dolphins, it kind of seems like their window, at least, of being a better team than we thought was about 2 years ago. But Kenneth Grant, definitely a need for them. Any opinions on this pick? Strongly either way.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they could have went several different ways with the pick, but yeah, I mean, defense, I don't have a problem with it because that's of the two units, that's the weaker unit of the two between their defense and their offense. And yeah, I do agree that maybe their window was a couple years ago when Tua was healthy. He had a good year. Tyreek had a really good season as well. And then they were one and done in the playoffs in that frozen tundra game against the Chiefs, which I don't think anybody should have been playing in that game in those conditions. But that's a separate conversation. But yeah, I don't really have any huge complaints. They're trying to, improve that defense, and they felt like this was the pick. So no, not any huge complaints with that.
Tyler Warren at 14 for the Colts. We were waiting for Tyler Warren to get picked. Now, the thing about Tyler Warren is he does have a very unique skill set. We've seen him playing in the backfield, in the slot, on the outside. He's a unique talent. I don't know if the Colts have the offensive mind to use him that way and to get the most out of his potential. I feel like he's definitely a player where the situation he went to matters heavily. But not only that, you were talking about a tight end that's going in a quarterback room that is absolutely disgusting. You could argue worse than the league with the Browns, one or two there. I mean, if Anthony Richardson starts, he might just be blocking the whole year. I don't know what to expect from Tyler Warren. Again, a I feel like a unique guy with so much talent went to just a bad situation for him. But for the Colts, I think they got a great player at great value. Just don't know how they're going to max his potential.
Yeah, I think it really all comes down to the quarterback play. Because I do like the trio of young receivers that the Colts have. They have Jonathan Taylor, and then you add Tyler Warren. Like, I like that offense, but it's the quarterback position that we all have a problem with. I thought Anthony Richardson was a little bit better, a little bit after he came back from his benching, but still, like, it's a huge work in progress. I mean, he missed basically his whole rookie year. He played 2 games, and then last year, like, he would chuck a 60-yard pass down the field, and you're like, that was amazing. But the little things, I mean, the red zone interceptions, it's like, what's going on? Like the completion percentages too. Like he'd be like 5 for 16 in the game. Like it's not great. It's not great. And then you add Daniel Jones to that quarterback room. We don't really have to go much into that on how I feel about Daniel Jones, but yeah, it's not a very good quarterback room, to say the least. So, and this is a big year, I think, for Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard, because if the Colts don't do good, I think they're going to be out of a job, honestly.
Yeah. I don't know if they're going to do good or what they got set up. Yeah, I've always been a big Anthony Richardson supporter going into his draft. Again, I think I kind of just fell into the right after that. The right before that was Josh Allen, and with him being raw and his arm strain, and Mahomes and those draft classes, I thought Anthony Richardson with his body, his arm strain. You look at all the physical tools, but again, you do have to play the position and do have touch, and it just hasn't looked like he's been able to improve on that. And they might be looking for a quarterback next year because it doesn't look like either thing's going to work out for them. We'll see how Tyler Warren pans out, though. Again, we talked about the Raiders before. Brock Bowers was the best tight end in the league his rookie year, and he didn't have much of a quarterback situation there. So you never know. Sometimes what you think is going to happen is nothing that actually happens. Next up, we go Jalen Walker for the Falcons. I'm actually pretty high on the Falcons. I really like both of their units. I feel like they are in a position to boom. Again, you look at their division, really only competition is the Buccaneers. And again, if a couple of players pan out, even the way the Buccaneers been winning that division with 8, 9, 10 wins, it doesn't take much for the Falcons to overstep them. It's just whether they get the most out of the players they have. I mean, we look at Kyle Pitts, we've been waiting for him to boom for 4 years. But you look at Bijan Robinson, Drake London, they took a massive step up this year, even with the quarterback situation in Kirk Cousins. That was pretty rough. So again, I think the team has a lot of young talent, and I think they could have went a lot of different ways with this pick. You go Jalen Walker, who's very similar to Abdul Carter in the sense that he could play linebacker or edge, so he should make a great impact to your defense if he pans out. I like the Falcons pick here, and I like their team overall going into the season. But I feel like we wait for the Falcons to boom, and we say they could be good every year. They're kind of that team that we say this every year.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Falcons, going into the draft, I think they had to go defensive heavy. I think they were one of those teams that had to do that. Because I mean, yes, they could have added another playmaker, another receiver, maybe, but I think they're pretty much set for the most part on offense. Because they weren't very good at rushing the passer. They were just not a good defense last year, and they do play in a winnable division. I did pick them to win the division last year, even though I am a Baker guy. I did pick the Falcons last year to win, so I wasn't complaining. But They definitely need to improve the defense, and hopefully they have done that. Because if they can get after the quarterback and Michael Penix is the real deal, this team is going to be dangerous next year.
Yeah, again, at the end of the day, they could sit between 7 and 9 wins, 6 and 9 wins, but at the end of the day, it's gonna really be how Penix performs, and then obviously we'll see what they can get the most out of their skill positions. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle for Arizona. I really didn't like this pick. I thought they could have got a lot more out of this pick with the people that got selected behind him. Again, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know a ton about him. I really don't. Defensive tackle for Ole Miss. It was one of their needs. Their defense was really bad this year, and you saw they addressed it. Their first 3 picks were all defensive picks. I'm pretty sure they took him and Edge, and they obviously took Will Johnson, who we'll get into. But they didn't wasn't really crazy about this pick, but again, obviously don't know a tremendous amount about the player.
Yeah, again, another one of those teams that I think had to go defensive heavy. And also in free agency. I mean, they went out and they signed Josh Sweat. They stole him from the Eagles. So hopefully the defense is better. Again, I'm with you. Don't really know much about the player. So that not many complaints with it. Again, defense was the one of the weaknesses of the team last year. So
Next up, we got Jamar Stewart, Texas A&M. Edge goes to Cincinnati. I really like this pick. I think if they would have went any position but defense, I would have really had to question them. Again, they could have went O-line, but I really think their first couple of picks had to be defense. They addressed their defense by getting an edge. It's going to be interesting to see as well, based on the contract issues they have on that side of the ball. It's going to be interesting to see if he's a replacement or an add-on. But I like Shamar Stewart. I really liked him at Texas A&M. A lot of people don't like this pick. A lot of people think when you look at his tape, he was just winning out just due to athleticism, and it's not going to translate. I liked him in college. I really like this pick. I don't like that I'm saying I like the pick because I hate the Bengals, but yeah, I think it was the right move for them.
yeah, again, one of those teams that really had to go defensive heavy. And if they just had an average defense last year, they probably make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I would if I were the Bengals, I would have went all defense. I know they didn't do that. But yeah, again one of those teams that really had to go defensive heavy because they have put so much investment into the offense, and rightfully so. I mean, you got Joe Burrow, and then you got both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase signed long term, which was very important for them. I mean, they were able to pull it off. I thought they would at least keep Chase. Obviously, I mean, you have to. I thought T. Higgins was the odd man out, but they were able to make it work. So they really have to hit on these defensive picks, and if their defense is better next year, they should be back in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought T. Higgins was going to be odd man out, and I think that's what I would have done. Again, I think you're just pouring in so much money, but it's hard to argue with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. But yeah, you're really putting yourself in a position now where you have to hit on these picks because if you don't, you have no money to really go out and get these defensive players. So it is definitely important. I do like the pick. Next up, we go Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. He is a guard. He's going to protect Sam Darnold. It was rumored that they were going to go receiver until they signed Cooper Kupp, but they got Cooper Kupp and they got Jackson Jigba. They got Charbonnet and they got Kenneth Walker. So, I mean, they got a ton on this offense. They really just needed line help. And again, we saw Sam Darnold in the beginning of the season. We saw him at the end. He was running for his life a little bit. And the way Sam Darnold contract structure is and his 1 year of production, even though it was great, they have an out on this year. And I think they're really trying to stack their chips for him to see if they're going to keep him long term. The offense is really great. And again, you add offensive line help. Hopefully, this offensive lineman comes in right away and improves this offensive line. And really, Sam Darnold has no excuses. A lot of the quarterbacks I like have no excuses, which sucks. But
Yeah, I know it's going to be a big year for you, man. So strap in. But yeah, you look at last year when he was with the Vikings. I mean, not only like did his play fall off in those last couple of games, but it was also like in large part because he wasn't getting good protection on that offensive line. And the Vikings did make improvements there in free agency and in the draft. But the Seahawks are another team that really need to improve that offensive line. Otherwise, this is just not going to work. Sam Darnold is not going to be able to deal with constant pressure. And the Seahawks have just had a very weird offseason in general. Like I feel like I don't think they got better, but I don't think they got worse. They kind of just moved sideways this offseason. Like, I do think Sam Darnold is an upgrade over Geno Smith. I wouldn't say it's significant, but I do think it's an upgrade. But with some of the other moves they made, like you traded DK, you signed Cooper Cup, like they had a weird offseason. I think there's going to be a team that's going to be competitive and fight for a wild card spot. I mean, in the first year without Pete Carroll, Mike McDonald did a good job. They finished with 10 wins. So, yeah, I mean, if they can get good protection with Sam Darnold, I mean, I think he should be okay. I like the running backs. I do like, Jackson Smith and Jigba now slides in as the number one. So we'll see. But yeah, protecting Sam Darnold is very important.
Yeah. Again, it's also too like unless you just have a complete elite team, when we talk about teams like the Seahawks with Sam Darnold, Buccaneers with Baker Mayfield, teams with these solid quarterbacks that aren't elite. Again, what's the most we're expecting out of them? Maybe one playoff win. There's only so far you could go with these guys. But yeah, I like what they did around him. Again, I kind of agree with you. You kind of got worse with Cooper Cup. You gained a little bit with Sam Darnold. It was just, I like the return they got, and I like not giving DK all that money. I think DK is not worth that. I mean, that money I feel like you give to like a top 5 receiver. But yeah, I don't mind the decisions they made. I think they made really good decisions. But again, I agree with you. When you look at what they did in totality, how much better does it make them? Maybe a game or two better. But next up, we go with the Buccaneers. Emeka Ibuka goes to Tampa Bay. I love Emeka Ibuka. I wasn't crazy about this pick fit wise. Again, we were talking about it. You have Mike Evans, you have Chris Godwin. They both have money to them for multiple years. I know they're on again. They're kind of back nine. Their better days are like behind them, but adding a Mecca Buka, is that really your need? You could argue wide receiver for them is their strongest position group. Yes, he could learn behind them, but Emeka Buka again, a guy that primarily plays in the slot. He's going to take away from Godwin as well because we know how much Godwin eats in the slot too. I love the player, and again, I can't really hate too much when a team gets a really good player, but Buccaneers aren't a team with a ton of needs, but I feel like they had bigger needs than this.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen them go defense with their first pick. I was definitely surprised because, again, like you laid it out with what they have a receiver. I mean, Chris Godwin's been a guy that has gotten injured a handful of times, and he is getting older. So the combination of that, you want to have that security. So that's and this isn't the only receiver they took, in this draft. So obviously, last year when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin went down, they had guys like Sterling Shepard, playing receiver for them. So and they somehow were able to, find a way to get into the playoffs, at least when they got Mike Evans back. But yeah, I think it's really just insurance policies for these older guys. Mike Evans has been durable, pretty much his whole career. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen them go defense because I feel like their defense needs some work because obviously it's not the defense it once was when they won the Super Bowl. I mean, they still have some guys there, but there's definitely positions that they could have addressed with that first selection. So that's my thoughts on that.
Next pickup, I thought it was the best pick in the whole entire first round. Jade Barron to the Broncos. I loved him and I loved the selection. At 20, I thought he was a top 10 player. Not only that, you look at the quarterbacks you're facing in that division and you pair up a secondary player with Patrick Surtain. I think that's absolutely lethal. A guy like Jade Barron, super flexible. And I feel like how we've been talking about Abdul Carter, Jalen Walker, and we're going to continue to talk about it. I feel like the NFL is just asking you to do more. And a guy like Jade Barron that could play multiple different positions along the field. He could play outside corner, inside corner. He could play safety. You can move him all around the defense. I think it's a defensive coordinator's dream to have him. And like I said, with the quarterbacks they're facing and just to upgrade that defense as well, I think from a value standpoint, they got a lot out of this pick. A lot of people were expecting Omar and Hampton, which they could have took as well, and I would have been okay with that. But Jade Barron, I love the pairing.
Yeah, that Broncos defense got better. I one of those teams that I really liked what they did in the offseason. You add a couple of former 49er players in Greenlaw and Ufanga. You add them now to an already good defense. And like you said, you got a guy that's going to line up opposite of Defensive Player of the Year, Patrick Surtain. So it's Broncos defense, might not be no fly zone, but it's, could be close to that.
Yep. Next up, we have Derek Harmon out of Oregon. As I'm wearing the Oregon hoodie, I don't like the pick. I think he's a good player. Again, I think there were better players behind him, but not only that, we were talking with a Steelers fan as the pick was made, which doesn't matter. Just saying it to the audience doesn't matter because they could have selected anybody. They could have selected prime Randy Moss, prime Tom Brady. He would have said he hated the pick. But Derek Harmon, I did agree with him. That defensive line with Hayward, it is not their biggest need. I just thought again there were better players behind them, and not only that, it could have been that wasn't your need either.
Yeah, I know from watching the draft coverage, one of the things that the Steelers defense did struggle with last year was stopping the run. I mean, especially late in the year when we saw Derrick Henry, he's still running, I mean, so they're trying to improve that, but I do agree. There's definitely other areas they could have addressed. Maybe they could have addressed the secondary. That was where I was kind of looking for maybe them taking a corner. Um, but they didn't do that. And the other thing too is, yeah, like you do have Cam Hayward, but also those guys are getting older. These guys, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt's getting older. Even in the secondary, I mean, Minka Fitzpatrick, as well. So obviously you want to add some youth to that defense. So I don't really have a huge problem with it. The Steelers are in just a weird spot in general. They're in NFL purgatory. They finish with 9 or 10 wins, they make the playoffs, and then they get blown out. So, yeah, I don't really have any huge complaints with the pick, though.
I mean, that's definitely the argument you can make. Same thing with Tampa Bay. Even though this is a strong position group for this team, the players at that position is getting older, so you can make some sense out of it. It isn't totally out of left field. At number 22, absolutely love this pick too. Chargers take Omar and Hampton. People watchers don't really know. Justin Herbert's my favorite player. Don't talk about it because it is a college football podcast. But
That's your guy.
today it comes into fruition. But Omar and Hampton, I love this pick. Again, you signed Najee Harris, but Najee Harris wasn't going to be a long-term answer. I don't think he could ever be a bell cow in the NFL at this point. He's a little slower. I think you need a running back in there to mix it up. Now he's really going to be a secondary back, what I think in the second half of the season. You have Amar Hampton, who I think if it wasn't for Ashton Jeanty, you're looking at a guy that's a top 10, top 15 pick. But again, he comes into a running back class that's loaded, but not only that, has a generational type guy in Ashton Jeanty. So he slides back, but I think you get a lot of value in this pick. He goes to the best situation possible because not only do we have a great offensive line, he's going to a coach that loves to run the football. And I also think, like I just mentioned, he goes in a great situation because he's not expected to produce right away. You are going to have a veteran back in that backfield as well. I love the pick, and I think the Chargers were definitely on the list of teams that needed another weapon. When you look at their roster, it's pretty much just Lad McConkey, and that's pretty much it. I mean, you could argue Quentin Johnson and other people, but they haven't really panned out to their potential. I absolutely love this pick. I thought it was an even better fit for Omarion Hampton than it was for the Chargers.
Yeah, don't forget they brought back Mike Williams too. So
Yeah.
that was another weapon. We know how you feel about Mike Williams. But yeah, no, this was a great spot for him. I mean, we saw last year what the Chargers were able to do with J.K. Dobbins, and we know the injury history that J.K. Dobbins has had, and he did a nice job when he did play. So this running game you would expect is going to be better next year. And yeah, I do agree. I was hoping we would get a better player than we've have gotten out of Najee Harris, but he just has not, been what I think we're hoping for when the Steelers took him. But I still think he's solid. I still think he's a guy who can have that, especially when you get towards the red zone, to be a guy that can punch it in for your team.
I
But
think he's
yeah,
in the best situation now, though, too.
oh yeah, no, especially better offensive line. Like I feel like when he got drafted to the Steelers, I feel like that's when the Steelers O line started to tail off. In Ben Roethlisberger's last couple of years, with guys retiring. So yeah, he's running behind a great offensive line. Back to Omarion Hampton, he's running behind a great offensive line now. Team loves to run the football, and it's going to be you hope it's going to be a well balanced offense. We saw Justin Herbert air it out more towards the end of the year as he got more acclimated to the new system. So yeah, no, I like the pick a lot for the Chargers too. That running game you hope is going to be good for him.
Next up, we go Matthew Golden to the Packers. Now, first time the Packers drafted a receiver in, I think they said 22 years. I thought this walkout was one of the craziest walkouts ever. I thought it was completely dialed, and I thought with all the fans chanting "Go Pack Go," I thought it was just a crazy scenario. And I thought the guy, I don't even remember who the guy was that announced the pick. I thought he did a
Oh,
great job as
yeah, it
well.
was Mark Murphy. Mark Murphy.
Yeah, I thought the whole entire scenario of that was great. Now, I'm kind of indifferent about the pick. I don't think value wise it was bad. I'm not insanely high on Matthew Golden. He comes in an offense where he was just another weapon when they had Gunnar Helm, Isaiah Bond. Like he didn't stand out much, but again, passing the football, they weren't as great as they expected to be. The issue I have with this pick is we talked about the Packers. They have a ton of weapons and solid weapons. Just nobody who could get into that wide receiver one category. If they draft Matthew Golden, he becomes that. It's a great pick, exactly what they needed. But if he's just going to be another good receiver for them, they have four of those already. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to be that complete number one or if he's just going to be another good receiver for them.
Yeah, with this era of Packers receivers, like you were saying, we were really looking for that guy to separate themselves. At times you think it's going to be Christian Watson, his rookie season, Romeo Dobbs, and then Jaden Reed, his rookie year, and then he has that 3 touchdown performance against the Eagles. And it's just like as the year progressed, the Packers really turned into like a run first team. And part of that was because Jordan Love was also hurt. But yeah, I mean, they're hoping with this pick that he could be that number one wide receiver. Now we're gonna have to wait and see, but that's their hope. Yeah, it's crazy how it's been this long since they've taken a receiver in the first round. It would have been nice for them to maybe have done that, during Aaron Rodgers' playing career. But Rodgers did have some good
When you
receivers. Don't
have
get me wrong.
Devontae and Jordy
I
Nelson,
yeah,
they're not
no, I get it. I get it. I get it. But yeah, it's definitely it is crazy that it's been this long though. But hopefully Matthew Golden is the guy, and Jordan Love could stay healthy next year because if you got a number one wide receiver combined with how well you ran the football last year, that's a really good offense. And this Packers team, even though the offense wasn't great last year, they still won 11 games. So and they are going to have to play well on offense because they play in a division with some really good teams. This is arguably the best division in football.
Yeah, and again, you never know. Like I like Brian Thomas Jr. last year, so I'm kind of a hypocrite because he was a secondary option in his offense, and he was a monster in the NFL year one. So you never truly know. Um, Next up, we got Donovan Jackson, guard Ohio State. He goes to the Vikings. I don't mind the pick. I think you definitely got to make this offensive line the best you could possibly make it when you're talking about a quarterback that never started a game, possibly starting for you, and he's going into a team that's going to be expected to contend. But not only that, that he didn't just start a game yet, he's also coming off a major injury as well. So this is like the extreme push to chips for the offensive line. I don't really like the choice of a guard here. Not really in love with Donovan Jackson, but again, I think it's they had to go first round with their they had to go offensive line with their first round pick.
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about Sam Darnold before and the Seahawks pick, the offensive line was not good towards the end of the year. The interior of the offensive line was not good. Darnold was getting sacked a ton of times. Again, part of it was on him, but most of the time, yeah, it was just the line could not hold up. So, and the Vikings have done a good job addressing that both in free agency and doing that with their first pick. So, yeah, I mean, and if you look at the Vikings in general, like obviously you got to see what JJ McCarthy does, but this team really does not have a lot of holes on it. So they're just trying to, continue to fill out the roster. Whatever holes they do have, they're trying to plug in. So that's really what this pick was.
And they're going to be one of the biggest stories this year. Obviously, it was a question all throughout last season with how good Sam Darnold was playing, what they were going to do at the position. Now they have essentially a rookie quarterback coming into this year. They're definitely going to be a big story. Next up, we go Jackson Dart at 25 to the Giants. I absolutely love this pick. I love it for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, as you know, I did really like Jackson Dart. But not only that, I just love how the Giants did not fall into the trap. They had a top three pick. They didn't go quarterback, and they waited it out, and they had their choice of what quarterback they were going to get. They go Jackson Dart. I love everything about him over Shedeur Sanders. I never thought on this channel that he was actually going to go over Shedeur Sanders, but him playing in the SEC, I thought he had a little more arm talent, a little more escapability, and I just love the way he lays on the line for his team. I don't know if you're going to love that as a Giants fan because he does take some major hits. Maybe it'll sharpen that up, but I really love the move here. I think the Giants addressed their two biggest needs on both sides of the ball. And like I said, just not falling into the trap of passing up on a blue chip prospect and then having the balls to trade back up and get your guy. I love it. And I really like Jackson Dart, so obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think as the first round was going, um, I think we all kind of had that sense that at some point, like one of these teams, whether it's the Giants or the Browns, is going to trade back in and take a quarterback. And once we got to the Texans pick and you saw that the Giants were the team, you knew like right away, yeah, they're going to take a quarterback. I mean, it would have been insane if that wasn't the case, but we knew that was going to happen. And I was kind of indifferent on who I would have preferred because I know we said like who would you rather have when they were about to make the pick. I did say Shador, but again, I wouldn't have cared either way because the guy that they're going to take, which ended up being Jackson Dart, is not going to start right away. He's going to sit for a little bit, which I think is the best case scenario for him. And again,
And after
whether or not
seeing how much Adore fell, you probably don't mind Jackson Dart
well,
now.
yeah. I mean, at that time, we thought he was going to get taken. I mean, I guess in the second round, but that didn't even happen. So, but yeah, you're not going to see Jackson Dart. I mean, if you see Jackson Dart next year, then you know that like things are not going well for the Giants record wise. But I loved what the Giants did. You know, like you said, they didn't fall into the trap. You know, they waited and they took a swing when they felt like they had to. And, you know, they need that quarterback of the future. My problem is if the Giants don't do well this year, which in all likelihood is probably going to happen, then you might see Brian Dable and Joe Shane lose their jobs. And now the new regime that comes in is going to come in and say, well, we didn't take this guy, so we don't have to commit to him. That's my only issue. But if the Giants end up doing somewhat well and they do keep Brian Dable and Joe Shane around, then Brian Dable is going to be able to work with his guy that they wanted. And you hope that he is, you know, the franchise quarterback. And, I guess Jackson Dart was the better fit because, like you said, he's got the mobility. And with Shador, Shador does have a little bit of mobility, but I think, I guess it's fair to say Jackson Dart is more mobile. And, and Brian Dable's worked with Josh Allen. So you're hoping that, he could turn him not exactly into Josh Allen because nobody's Josh Allen,
He did say
but
he reminded him of Josh Allen, but he also said that about Daniel Jones. So I guess I'm all
Yeah.
with a grain of
So,
salt.
we got to wait and see. You know what? He's Jackson Dart. That's who he is. Just try to make him the best version of Jackson Dart that he could possibly be, and that the Giants have found their quarterback of the future because it obviously didn't work out with Daniel Jones. But I was a fan of what the Giants did. I really like what they've done in the draft in general. But again, might not add up to a lot of wins.
Now it's going to be interesting to see too with the veteran quarterbacks they have in front of him. Because usually when you have veteran quarterbacks, you don't want them to have too much personality. That room has a lot of
It has a lot of
personality,
personality.
but I think both of those quarterbacks are really going to embrace teaching and Jackson Dart learning under them. I don't expect them to be reluctant or have problems. I think both of them are happy enough that they have an opportunity to compete for the starting job because, again, there's really only a couple situations they could have gone to that would have let them do that. I like everything the Giants have done, honestly, but again, like you said, the way the division is set up, the way their roster is right now, I think they made all the correct moves this offseason, but they're not going to win tomorrow. And also, too, the thing about Jackson Dart that is kind of tough is that the veteran quarterbacks they signed, again, like we said, they're happy to compete for a starting job, but they're not going to be playing great every game. And eventually, could be game two, fans are going to be calling for Jackson Dart, which I'm a little worried about because I want this guy to, you know, learn and be put in when he's ready and not be put in to die like every quarterback for New York teams has been. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. The last thing I was going to say is on that, yeah, maybe if the quarterbacks aren't playing, like if Russ is not playing well in game two, you start hearing the fans, chanting for Jackson Dart. I mean, this regime wants to win games, and I don't think like they don't they don't want to feel the pressure from the fans. They don't want to just be like, all right, now we got to do something and, shake things up already. Like, I think they're going to stick to it. Like, they're going to ride it out with Russ, see what happens. And maybe like later in the year, if they're not doing well, which again, we all expect that to happen, then maybe you see him. but they are going to give Russ some runway with this starting quarterback job. He is the starter. Um, we'll see what happens, but hopefully we're not in that position. Hopefully the Giants somehow have a good year and Jackson Dart can just sit and just learn and absorb as much knowledge as possible and not throw interceptions like Jameis Winston.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see with the regime and everything. Like their jobs on the line. Very interesting that they didn't make a pick that helps them win at the moment. Again, taking a pick of somebody that's going to sit. And it's going to be interesting to see if this regime puts them on the field because they don't know how many days they have to make things work, and that is their pick. We'll see how everything pans out. It's going to be very interesting. Next up, we have James Pierce Jr. This trade was kind of crazy. They traded up the Falcons, and they also had to give up another first round pick. But I absolutely love this pick. I thought James Pierce Jr. was a guy, again, the whole entire college football season was rumored to be a top 5 to 10 pick. Then, as it happens every year to somebody, the character concerns an issue. He slides back. But I think very well he could end up being a top 3 player in the draft. Like that wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. And again, taking an edge rusher along with Jalen Walker, they're really stacking up this defense with an offense that has a lot of weapons. I mean, again, like I said, we say it every year, but Falcons may make a jump.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. We liked it from the Rams' perspective too because they got a haul for it. They get the first round pick next year.
Yeah.
So you like that from that perspective. And again, Falcons add to that defense that really needs to improve and be able to get after the quarterback, which they really failed to do last year. So yeah, I have no problems with that pick.
Next up, Malachi Starks, a guy that I wasn't necessarily in love with, but another guy that was rumored to go within the top 10, top 15. Ravens get him at 27. I really like the fit because when we look at the Ravens last year, their defense did take a step back. Not really sure why. I mean, I know they lost Patrick Queen, which is a huge deal, but it took a massive step back. I felt like in points per game when they would show the points per game like on the screen every national televised game they were on. Like they took a massive step back on defense, and it felt like they had to outscore the other team to win. I think this definitely helps their secondary. And again, I think they're getting a player with a lot of value. But again, when you look at the bottom half of the first round and you look at the first half of the second round, all these guys were rumored to go within the top 10, top 15. So everybody's getting the guys that fell now. I thought it was a really good fit, though.
Yeah, I mean, on the topic of the Ravens defense, it was like the opposite when talking about against the pass and against the run. Because against the run, they were still like very solid, but against the pass, it was like the opposite. They were like towards the bottom, and it did get a little bit better towards the end of the year. And obviously, like they come like a play away, a play or two away from getting back to the AFC Championship game. But yeah, secondary was definitely something that they had to address, and they did that. So I like that pick for them because again, the secondary was a weakness for the team last year.
Next up, we go Tyler Williams, defensive tackle, Ohio State. He goes to the Lions. Don't really have much of an opinion on this pick at all. Guess they could have used somewhat of help on the defensive line. Lions, we're getting to the teams now that have really no needs. He he gets as defensive lineman. I thought the value at this pick was fine, and I really have no opinions on it. Like they didn't really need much. They had a defensive lineman. Should help
Yeah,
us.
yeah. I mean, look, when you look at them last year, I mean, they got ravaged by injuries, on defense. So you're adding to a unit that for depth, and yeah. So I'm with you. Not really any strong opinions on it. That's a team that doesn't really have a ton of holes as we get towards the end of the first round here. So yeah, no complaints there.
Next up, we got Josh Connolly Jr. tackle Oregon. He goes to the Washington Commanders. I love the pick, even though Washington had its had its issues on the offensive line. They were able to prevail. They went all the way to championship game. Jane Daniels did play great. Now you're looking to boost that offensive line. They definitely addressed that in the offseason. They add Josh Connolly as well. The only issue with the pick for me is I thought he did go a little high, but again, you're getting a tackle at this pick. You really can't complain. I thought it was a good pick. Thought they could have went running back as well, but they go offensive line, and they're really, again, stacking their chips for Jaden Daniels. You add a receiver this offseason. That's a big name. You address the offensive line. They're doing everything to make him succeed. And while your quarterback's on a rookie contract, that's exactly what you should be doing. And Jane Daniels is already one of the best quarterbacks in the league, so it's going to be interesting to see what else Washington does the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, you want to protect the franchise. I love the pick. I love it even more just because they went out and in the shocking trade, getting Laramie Tunsil from the Texans. So now you're set at both tackle positions. So yeah, I was a fan of that pick. You want to make sure that Jane Daniels stays upright. You know, he did get banged up a little bit last year, but that was also because maybe he ran into some trouble. But yeah, I really like that pick for them.
Next up at 30, I thought it was the worst pick of the first round. We do have a friend that's a Bills fan. Hopefully, he's not listening. Maxwell Harrison, cornerback, goes to the Bills. Thought it was actually a horrible, horrible pick. I thought they should have went edge. I would have went edge, or linebacker. I think that defense definitely needs some work. Von Miller left. I would have went with some position that has a little more of an impact. But not only that, Jade Barron goes, what, 10 picks before you? I thought Jade Barron was the best pick in the draft. You wanted a quarterback. Thought you could have traded up for him. Not only that, Will Johnson slides to the second round that I thought was a top 7, top 10 prospect. I know he had the knee concerns, but if you were going to take a cornerback, the fact that you didn't go dumb to and went Maxwell Harrison, I thought it was absolutely awful. Not only did I think they had more needs, it's crazy how much needs the Bills have. Josh Allen is really just carrying an organization, but compared to the teams they're picking around, they're not as well off like throughout their positions as these other teams. But again, I thought again with the two quarterbacks that were supposed to go in the first round, that your name was Maxwell Harrison. I thought it was disgusting.
That's right. That's very strong. I mean, yeah, not a strong opinion for me when it comes to the pick. Um, they went out and they got Joey Bosa on the defensive line. Obviously, he's older, he's dealt with injuries, but still, they at least tried to attempt to replace Von Miller. But I mean, they're another team that went defensive heavy in this draft. So collectively, maybe they didn't take the specific position on defense that you wanted at that point, but they did go out and try to revamp it. I mean, obviously, they're kind of set at a lot of positions on the offense. So yeah, I mean, again, not as strong of opinion on the pick as you. I mean, we got to see how it pans out. But I will say collectively, the Bills did, go in on the defense. So, hopefully for them that the unit improves because of that.
Next up, we have Jahad Campbell to the Eagles. Linebacker can play a little bit of edge as well. He adds depth to the Eagles defense. They definitely needed that defense sucked this year. I'm just kidding. But this
Well,
team
maybe the
actually,
year before.
this team actually should have been revoked all 7 round picks because this
I
team
do
is
agree.
fully loaded. It just doesn't need anything at
Yeah.
all. Um, he fell in the draft. Linebacker, Alabama to the Eagles. Probably will end up being an All Pro, but he
Yep.
did slide. I do like him. He'll, the Eagles, anything they touch turns to gold. So obviously, I
Yeah.
have no problem with this
I
team.
mean, they showed I forget if it was when I was watching it on ESPN or on NFL Network, but you see like the amount of players that they have taken from both Alabama and Georgia. It is ridiculous. And that continued here. And they lost some guys in free agency, but I wasn't concerned about it because it's a very good front office. They'll figure it out. And they're already doing it. The defense is going to be fine. They got the young studs in the secondary. They re-signed Zach Bond. I know some guys on Brandon Graham's retiring, and they did lose Josh Sweat, but they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. And this is a guy that, like you said, be a linebacker. He can line up on the edge. So, I mean, listen, they lost guys. They'll be fine. That defense is still going to be insane next year.
And when you talk about a draft of just everybody overthinking things, the Eagles just continue to not do that. They take players from Alabama and Georgia. They appear in Super Bowls. Everybody else doesn't for the most part.
Yep.
So, yeah, just Eagles just absolutely ridiculously loaded. And then at pick 32, they trade back one pick. They get Josh Simmons, the Kansas City Chiefs offensive tackle. I like the move. I mean, again, we're talking about a team with not much needs, but tackle position, again, we've seen that be trouble for them. They take Josh Simmons, shore up the offensive line. I didn't think it was a bad pick at all.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, back in February. I mean, this was a lot worse than the Bucks Super Bowl. But we saw Patrick Mahomes running for his life. He looked very pedestrian. That was the worst game that we've ever seen him play by far. I
Yeah,
mean,
I don't
unless
even
you
know
think the
about
Tampa.
possession. He looked bad, bro.
Yeah, it was just bad all around. It was bad all around. I honestly I got that feeling that the game was over before it even started when they were doing the pregame introductions. When they had John Hamm introduce the Chiefs and Bradley Cooper introduce the Eagles. I thought after that I was like, I don't have a good feeling about this game. But that's besides the point. Yeah, we saw this previous Super Bowl against the Bucks. Offensive line was horrible. They improved it, and then they went back to the AFC Championship game. They lost, but they made it back to the Super Bowl 3 times. And they had to do it again because you had Joe Tooney, who's no longer there now. He was moved from guard to tackle. Um, so I feel like the Chiefs will figure it out, and this was definitely a stepping stone towards that. You want to protect Patrick Mahomes, and you do, and you're hoping that the Chiefs do make it back to the Super Bowl. We don't see that ever again, but who knows? So yeah, I don't have any complaints with the pick.
So now we're gonna get into the other rounds of the NFL draft. I'm gonna skip around a little bit because it only took us an hour and 16 minutes to get through the first round. So we're
Yeah,
gonna
unless you
skip
want to be
around a
here
little bit.
till tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we're gonna skip around a little bit. We're not gonna talk about every pick in each round. Obviously, I'm just gonna take out a selection of picks in each round that I just wanted to highlight based on team needs, based on players, anything that's like somewhat exciting. And yeah, then eventually we'll wrap this up. So first pick we're gonna highlight Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. He goes to the Texans. Very similar type of player to Debo Samuel. When we look at a big receiver at 6'4", 214 pounds. But the thing about this pick that I really thought that I liked, when you talk about Tank Dell, him having just a multitude of injuries, when we talk about Stephon Diggs, obviously, the only receiver they had in that room was Nico Collins, and they lost Lyman. They need to add something for CJ Stroud. Did you like the move here for the need?
Yeah, I mean they took a couple of Ohio State wide receivers in this draft, but yeah, this was definitely like we talked a lot about teams that needed to address the defense. This was a team that definitely needed to address the offense because of the injuries. Stephon Diggs is now no longer there. Tank Dell is going to be out for the whole year, and who knows if he's even going to ever play again. Hopefully he does, but it's I mean that gruesome injury he suffered late in the season. It's going to be tough to come back from that. But yeah, they needed to do that because with the playmakers getting hurt, the offensive line not being great, you gotta, improve this offense. And CJ Stroud kind of took a step back last year because of that. And hopefully, if the line's better and you have more weapons, you see more of rookie year CJ Stroud.
Next up, we got Nick Emmanuel, safety out of South Carolina. He goes to the Seahawks. I love this pick because, again, I feel like he's very similar to Cam Chancellor when you talk about a big safety that can blitz as well, can do multiple things. I don't really know how much of a need defense was for the Seahawks. I wasn't really following. I know they have a good secondary, obviously. I just didn't watch the Seahawks that much this year, but I love this pick because it reminded me of Cam Chancellor. Even though nobody from that regime is still whether
Yeah.
coaching players, nobody's from when Cam Chancellor played. I think Seahawks fans will get a little bit of a flashback of him if he pans out. Any thoughts on
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. No, I think they did say like he was originally a linebacker and then he switched to safety.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I mean that basically is Cam Chancellor. I mean Cam Chancellor was unbelievable, the Legion of Boom. But yeah, I mean the defense. When you look at the two units, I mean you'd probably say the defense is probably the stronger unit of the two, and Mike McDonald with that defensive background. So yeah, and they got some good players in the secondary. Julian Love, a former Giant, Witherspoon.
Drake
So
Woolen.
yeah, so that's a good defense. So and they're only adding to that.
Next up, we go Quinshon Judkins, Ohio State. He goes to the Browns. Browns actually double dip that running back, so we don't have to go over the pick when it comes up. They also go Dylan Sampson as well. You have two different type of running backs. Dylan Sampson, not really a pass catcher, more of just a pure runner. And then Quinshon Judkins, obviously, we saw at Ohio State what he could do in the receiving game as a complementary to Travion Henderson. We actually saw him live as well, as we did go to Ohio State. But they basically just said the Nick Chubb era is over. Obviously, they said it by not signing him, but also adding two running backs in this draft. And I'm not really sure if I love what the Browns did in this draft. I mean, when you talk about, we like the trade in the first round, but then when you talk about them getting Quinshawn Judkins, Dylan Sampson, even though it's a loaded running back class, them draft two running backs. Then they also draft two quarterbacks. Like they're doubling up at positions for a
And they
team.
drafted a tight end too, which I thought was a little questionable because
Yeah,
you have
like
David Njoku there, so I don't that was another one where I was a little confused by. I felt like they should have tried to get another receiver opposite of Jerry Judy, but
I didn't
they
feel like
didn't
they were
seem to do
really
that.
going needs. I just felt like they were going just like best player available at every pick, I guess. But the running back situation, I don't really mind as much. Like Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson. We talked about how loaded this running back class is. I think those are pretty solid picks. And again, at the end of the day, we see it in the NFL. Unless you have a Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, every team really goes two, three running backs nowadays. So it's not bad to have two. But again, I kind of just felt like the Browns were just like I don't know, just not using their picks like wisely for a team that was number two. Again, everybody could talk about how they're better than a number two picking team, but at the end of the day, you were number two, and you're picking the same position multiple times. Like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this was a team that did win 11 games a couple years ago, and they had 5 different starting quarterbacks, and then basically the same thing last year, and the reverse happened. They won 3 games. So this is definitely a better team than 3 wins. I mean, the main thing is, yeah, it comes down to the quarterback play, you know? So, I mean, the Nick Chubb era is over, with these 2, running back selections. Like I said, I would have liked to have maybe them address the receiver position to go along with Jerry Judy. Although my guy Cedric Tillman is on the team, let's not forget about him. So, yeah, that was something that I probably would have liked to have seen them done. But they replaced Nick Chubb. They're hoping the running game is good. They got a nice duo. They're hoping so. And again, we'll see how the quarterback play is.
Next up, his compliment, we go Travion Henderson to the Patriots. This was a pick I actually did not mind. You could argue it was a little high, obviously, as Ramondre Stevenson did get a payday just last year. But you talk about Travion Henderson, he is the best pass blocking back in the draft. So thumb at an offensive line and a good pass blocking back. But not only that, for New England Patriots, just like some of these teams, you really just got to hit on picks. It's not even about, in a sense, the position necessarily. You just got to hit on picks as long as you're not double up on the positions, like we said. But Travion Henderson, we saw him. I think he's a great running back, and I think this offense just they just need to put more on this offense to help Drake May because I think everybody knows that Drake May is going to be good at some point if they just get things right.
Yeah, no, I didn't have a problem with this because I know there was maybe like some conversations that if they traded back, could they take Ashton Genty, which I think at that point would have been a mistake because, like you said, they just paid Ramondre Stevenson a ton of money. This I think made more sense. You take a running back later in the draft, and you're adding another playmaker to this offense that is in desperate need of that. They did add Stephon Diggs in the offseason to that receiver room. But yeah, I think the duo of Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson, that's good. Henderson is a change of pace back, and he's also receiving back too. He can do different things for you. So yeah, I don't have a problem with the pick.
Next up, we got Luther Burden to Chicago. Again, kind of a very big name here. When you talk about Luther Burden, last year he was rumored to be a top 5 to top 10 pick. He did have a little underwhelming season last year, but just Missouri did as a whole. When you talk about Brady Cook wasn't as good as we thought he was going to be in his last year. Luther Burden brings a little bit of different type of play style to this offense. He is kind of a field stretcher, but not only that, kind of has some Debo Samuel like just like instincts. Luther Burden, I was fine with this pick. Again, I thought he should have won the second round. I didn't think he should have been a first rounder. And the Bears, again, you could argue, I mean, maybe not adding too much to the offense, but they're really going all offense for Caleb Williams.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Now he's basically the replacement to Keenan Allen. So, like you said, DJ Moore, you got Roma Dunze. They drafted a tight end, Loveland. They already had Cole Kmet. So, yeah, again, like we said before, they're trying to build around Caleb Williams, and they're hoping now with the better offensive system and with all these playmakers that he's really going to take that next step in 2025.
Next up, we got Tyler Shaw to the Saints. Absolutely hate the pick. Thought it was one of the worst picks, if not the worst pick in the whole entire draft. Again, I don't understand it, but I've been guilty of doing this too with certain players. You watch Tyler Shaw for 4 years in college. He was injured constantly all 3 years. We watch Louisville every other week. He doesn't stand out. Then come draft time, he skyrockets all the way up. The guy's 26 years old. Like you would have to start tomorrow again to max out years and stuff. And I don't think he's going to be able to again. Like
And
again,
he's 25, right?
he's going to be 26 when the season
Oh, he's
starts.
gonna be oh, wow.
It's like, it's one thing if you stay in college a little bit later or you lately produce and you come out and you're like Joe Burrow, but again, you're talking about a Louisville team that as well, and with the injury history as well, and with the age, I just can't make of it. But again, we knew coming into the draft that he was going to go somewhat high. The hype was there. I just, again, I just can't make why he ended up going this
Yeah, when I see people comparing him to Brandon Whedon, that's not a good sign. That's not a good comparison. Um, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting again what's going to happen with the Saints this year because with the Derek Carr injury situation, and what does that mean for Spencer Rattler too? Because he's still there.
high.
Um, yeah, I mean, look, new regime, Kellen Moore, I guess wanted him, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, that was a little bit. Once that happened, then you were like, Shador's really going to slide, isn't he?
Yeah. I I don't know. Even though I hate him, like if Milrow would have went above Shador or something, or I don't know, like to have somebody like Tyler Short to me that just didn't stand out in college and is this age just to go this high, like I just can't make of it. Um, Next up, we'll talk about the Jets pick Mason Taylor, tight end. Don't really like it at all either. For the value, I didn't think he should have went this high. Jets going tight end. They've gone tight end in the first 4 rounds. Feels like almost every year, and it never pans out. Um, Again, there were two tight ends in the first round. They didn't decide to go there, and then you're taking a huge tier back with Mason Taylor. Again, who knows? But they definitely need another weapon in this offense. But I just don't like it at all. I feel like the Jets just can't pick that position, and you're not taking a guy that's like a guaranteed good player.
Yeah, I think if there was a move to be made with the tight end spot, they would have done it in the first round, and they didn't do that. They took the tackle, which again is fine. But yeah, they've been searching for that next tight end for them. And maybe it is Mason Taylor. We'll have to see. New team, new system, but yeah, not again, not strong, not a strong opinion on this one.
Next up, we go with Will Johnson to the Cardinals. I don't want to say grand slam because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but Will Johnson was a guy that I had as a top 7 pick. The knee injuries and all his injuries were a concern. He was in and out of Michigan this year, but a guy that's 6'4", could play on the outside, was a complete lockdown corner that really didn't even need safety help in college. Like, I completely loved him, but again, how these injuries and these rumors work, it either works out where the injury is legit and it's going to hamper him his entire career, and the team that stayed off of him were correct, or everybody was overreacting, and the team that pulled the trigger is going to end up with a great player. Time will just tell. Anything you can make at his pick.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's with the injury stuff, that's why he fell. Like I actually had in my mock draft, I had the 49ers taking him with their first pick, and that was at 13. So I think so. But yeah, again with the Cardinals, like I said before, a team that needed to improve the defense, and you're hoping that he plays a role in that. So I really did like this pick for the Cardinals.
Next up at 51, Panthers take Nick Gordon. Again, another game wrecker edge. Same thing with James Pierce Jr. Had character concerns. Was supposed to be a top 10, top 15 pick. Again, as the draft came along, there was no chance of that. He goes all the way down here. But I really like the Panthers taking positions of impact for a team that is pretty bad. You take an edge, you take a receiver. You're looking to really help both sides of the ball. You're looking to help your quarterback, and you're looking to help your defense. And you're taking like major positions with these picks, which I think helps. Anything on this pick?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they take the playmaker and then they take an edge rusher. They're looking for that replacement for Brian Burns. This is a defense that definitely, needs some more talent. So, and looking at last year, he had 5 sacks. So hopefully, those numbers go up. Getting drafted by the Panthers can help that defensive line. So, yeah, another position of need for them. Again, that side of the ball needs improvement.
Yep. Now we'll move around. Let's see where we want to go. In the third round, the Texans take another receiver out of Iowa State. They take Jalen Noel. Very interesting. Again, a smaller type receiver, but teams are really like double dipping on players. They just seem high. I mean, the Texans do need help, but again, they have Tank Dell, they have Nico Collins, they have Mechie. One receiver, we did like that. How do you feel about two receivers in back-to-back rounds?
I mean, again, like just adding more depth to that position. Last year, he had almost 1,200 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns, 80 receptions, which is a pretty good year. Um, you're just trying to add more playmakers for CJ Stroud, opposite of Nico Collins. So yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the Texans double dipping.
Next up, we have Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. He goes to the Steelers at running back. I absolutely loved him. I think again, what he can do in the pass catching range is limited, but I think the Steelers are really getting a ton of value here in a loaded running back class. Not only that, you're going with Warren, and I think they signed Gainwell as well. You really don't have much in that room. You don't have a quarterback. You got to have something in the offense. So I think Caleb
They
Johnson.
got they got some pieces. They got some
Yeah, I
pieces.
mean,
I don't think they have
outside that,
nothing.
but I don't know who's
Yeah.
gonna throw him the ball yet.
Well, yeah, that's the biggest question.
But again, I like Caleb Johnson in college. I think he's pretty much like a pure runner, and then they could mix in Gainwell, Warren with him as well. I think they definitely need to address the position. I think they got a ton of value there.
Yeah, I saw he had 21 rushing touchdowns last year, so I mean that's really good. They obviously lost Najee in free agency, but they weren't looking to bring him back. But yeah, Kenneth Gain. If you're talking about him being a traditional runner, Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren are kind of like those change of pace backs. So yeah, I mean that was definitely a position that I saw the Steelers addressing at some point in this draft with them losing out on Najee Harris. I didn't think they were going to go into the year with Gainwell and Jalen Warren as the only two running backs on the team. So yeah, I have no problems with this pick.
Next up, we go Noah Williams. He goes to the Chiefs, cornerback. We really see a lot of these teams with these elite quarterbacks just really going all in on defense. Again, they feel like that quarterback on offense could carry the load for them, and they're going on defense. I really like Noah Williams. I thought he was great at Cal, but he goes alongside McDuffie, which should be interesting. Again, we're talking about a team with not a lot of needs, but just very interesting to see how these teams with elite quarterbacks are just straying away from offense pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, and look at what they did last offseason. They traded L'Jarius Sneed, and it didn't matter. The defense is still solid. So, with this pick, it only gets better. So yeah,
Next up, we have Jalen Milrow, definitely a guy that we talk about a lot in our sports chat, but kind of for the wrong reasons. Everybody that's a fan of a team with our friends is hoping that they didn't select him.
yeah,
Luckily,
you guys are pretty rough on him. I didn't partake in that.
yeah, nobody did. He goes to the Seahawks. A very interesting move in the third round because, again, like we mentioned, Darnold, he has a 1 year out. Him and Darnold, two completely different quarterbacks. They would have to completely change the offense if they were to transition to him. But not only that, they also get rid of Sam Howell as well. So like this might be the guy behind Darnold. Like I just mentioned, I think it's very weird because if Darnold were to get hurt in the season, you have to completely change your identity if you were looking to put him in as an option. But really showing in my eyes that again with your third pick in the draft that you're not 110% on Darnold.
Yeah, this one was definitely interesting as well. Um, from like the limited time that I've watched Milrow, I mean, I did watch the Alabama Georgia game, and he made some really good plays in that. I think he's a good athlete. He's a good runner, but you want him to be better as a passer, And I mean, yeah, it would be completely different having him start over Darnold if Darnold were to get hurt, let's say, because Darnold's not, you know that athletic. Darnold's going to primarily throw from the pocket. So that is an interesting spot for him. You hope with him sitting and just again absorbing the knowledge that hopefully he can become more polished as a passer. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, definitely an interesting spot for him to end up. A completely different coast of the country too. I mean, he goes from one side to now he's on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But again, very surprising when that happened. You're like, man, Shador just keeps on falling.
Yep, he keeps on falling. And now we get into the next pick, Dylan Gabriel to the Browns. Like it's gonna be the craziest thing. I feel like in a day, maybe right now, an hour after the draft, people are gonna forget that Dylan Gabriel went before Shador. So he's even more in their plans than Shador, is what they're saying. He gets selected, not with their third pick, but their third round pick. I'm pretty sure they had two or three picks already before this. But Dylan Gabriel, he was a standout player in college. Only thing is, he is very small. He might be even smaller than Kyler Murray, but he's a guy that has a ton of arm talent. He actually broke the record from any notable quarterback with miles per hour on a ball. But yeah, he definitely has, and he can move if needed. But he was out of offense with Oregon. That was a pretty spread offense with a ton of weapons, and he was just a distributor. Him going into the Cleveland Browns situation, not going to be that. But again, the whole thing is going to be him being talked about with Shador, because all eyes are going to be on Shador. It's going to be one of the biggest stories in the NFL. But like I said to you before this, earlier in this video, I don't think he's going to be the one to go, because I don't think you take a third round pick and cut him in 2 months. So, like we said, Shador is an uphill battle. Again, we talked about the Browns doubling up on positions, us not understanding it, but what do you make of it?
Yeah, he's a fellow lefty, so there's that. And like you said, played for Oregon. Oregon was the Big Ten champs, and then they were knocked off. He had a very good year, 30 touchdown passes to 6 interceptions. But yeah, the size is a bit of an issue. And, is he going to be a starter in the NFL, or is he just going to be a backup? I think all of us would probably lean more towards saying he'd be more so a backup,
Yeah.
but we'll see. Yeah, I am in agreement with you too. I don't think, if when the Browns have to make a decision at quarterback and who's going to ultimately be the odd man out, I don't think it's going to be him. It could very well come down to Kenny Pickett, who they traded for, and Shador, or maybe it does come down to Dylan Gabriel. We'll see. But I think
Or Flacco.
I think Kenny Pickett or Flacco. I still think Flacco's probably safe just because he's that veteran presence. Like you could consider Kenny Pickett a veteran, but I mean, he's been in the league for what 3-4 years now
He's
already,
a
which is
veteran that started 15 games in the first.
yeah. So like I think Flacco is safe. I think you bring in Flacco, you have that veteran presence. I think he's fine. I think it's the other three that they're gonna have to fight for spots, and I think could be Kenny Pickett as the odd man out. But yeah, we'll see what happens with this Dylan Gabriel pick, because like you said, it's going to be constant discussion with him and Shador Sanders now in the same quarterback room.
Next up, a guy that I loved in college, Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame. He goes to the Falcons. Falcons, a team we've been discussing, I feel like this whole episode. They've been going a lot of defense. Again, they do have a lot on the offense when you look at Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Penix, Mooney, your guy. So there's a lot on that offense. They go totally defense. Um, how do you like the defensive approach for the Falcons?
No, like I said, I love it. And now you add him to the secondary. They brought in Jesse Bates, in a recent offseason. I think it was not last year, but the year before. And then you also have AJ Terrell, who you paid a lot of money as well in that secondary. So yeah, no problems with that either.
Next up, we are gonna go to your New York Giants. One of these weird players again in college football. When you look at the totality of college football last year, you could argue he was a top three player in the sport. But again, a guy, I guess analysts don't think he's going to translate as well to the NFL, which I agree. I don't think he's going to be a superstar in the NFL. But the spot the Giants take him in, also, I don't mind at all. When you look at their running back room, Tyron Tracy, a little bit of a smaller back. You had Cam Scatterby, who's almost a fullback at that position. It's definitely a good compliment. Not only that, you do have in the back of your mind of him being better than you think he will, just because of what you saw out of college. he can catch for somebody his size, and again, him running the football last year was insane. Just have just a little bit of the same thing I get kind of with Najee Harris. He is going to be a little slow for the NFL, but I actually don't mind the move at all. Giants have a lot of aura as the picks they're taking. I mean, you're looking at three guys that were at the top of college football.
Yeah, so and I said in our group chat, now with him being added to that running back room with Tyrone Tracy, you're hoping it's gonna be, you know, similar to what we got with Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw. That's kinda how I look at it. I'm not surprised that the Giants addressed this, position in the draft just because I felt like they could use a compliment to Tyrone Tracy. I know they have Devin Singletary there, but Singletary is what he is. So I do like it, and like you said, he can catch passes out of the backfield. He's got the aura. So I like the pick, and that's the side of the ball that for the Giants has been a problem for years, and they're trying to add as much as they can to it. You're hoping so. I do like the combination of him and Tracy. I'm excited. I'm excited for that. Just hope that the offensive line can run block for them.
Yeah, that's going to definitely be a question. Next up, we go Jack Kaiser. Again, when you get into these later rounds, you're talking about some of the best players in college football that they don't think are really going to translate to that level. Jack Kaiser, you could argue the best player on Notre Dame, the leader of the defense. Jacksonville goes a linebacker, which is kind of interesting. I don't mind it. I think, again, like you're trying to take these impact players, these impact positions, when you're a team that's that low in the draft. They definitely need help on defense. Again, I don't know if every pick they made on defense so far has completely panned out a la Trayvon Walker. But Jack Kaiser, a pick I like. What do you think of this pick?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's the side of the ball that really needs improvement with the Jaguars. I do like some of the players that they do have, particularly on the defensive line. But yeah, from linebackers to secondary, they got to add some more talent there. So you hope that they have an impactful player with this pick.
Next up, we go. Where are we going to go? Trevor Etienne, obviously Travis's brother. He goes to the Carolina Panthers. A pick I did not understand. I thought Trevor Etienne was a really good player. I thought there was better running backs behind him. But outside of that, the Panthers have just been loading up at this running back position. I don't get why. You obviously talk about the investment they made in the Chuba Hubbard, and you talk about the investment they made pick wise in Jonathan Brooks. They just keep going running back on running back. Was this really a need for this team?
I don't think necessarily, but then again, you could say, well, Jonathan Brooks tore his ACL again last year, so now you just plug ETN behind Chuba Hubbard on the depth chart. So I guess you could look at it from that perspective, but they probably could have addressed another position with this pick. So I do agree with you on that.
Next up, another person, one of the best players in college football. Everybody remembers his fumble recovery against Texas. We're going with Jack Sawyer from the Steelers. I actually don't even remember my Steelers friend opinion on this, but they go Jack Sawyer, edge rusher. Again, they seem to be loading up on defense as well for a lot of these picks. What do you think of Jack Sawyer?
Yeah, I mean, he made that signature play against Texas in the college football playoff, the scoop and score. We obviously saw him play live when we went. So, like I said, the Steelers' defense is getting a little bit older, so they're just adding more youth to it. So I don't have a problem with what they did there.
Next up for the Titans, Alik Alumanor. Titans go receiver, which I actually like. I really like Alik Alumanor. Again, very similar to Tetuar McMillan, kind of like a bootleg Tetuar McMillan. Obviously not as talented, but a pretty big receiver on the outside. When we talk about Calvin Ridley, he can play in the slot. But not only that, I feel like this Titans offense for Cam Ward, it's going to make it difficult for him to translate. They do need a little more. I really think when you look at Calvin Ridley, I mean, everybody wanted him in fantasy. We know when he went to the Jaguars, everybody thought that was going to be a big boom. Wasn't as much of a boom as we expected. Goes to the Titans. Really not much last year. Same thing with Tony Pollard. Another guy that's better days are probably behind him. When you look at what he did in Dallas compared to Tennessee,
And then they
massive.
added Tyler Lockett.
Tyler Lockett again. They are adding veterans to guide him at least. But again, when you look at their talent in the NFL, they aren't these top guys like they once were. They had a league out manner. I really like the pick. What do you think about just Tennessee's offensive general on this pick?
Yeah, and like we just said, with the veteran guys on the team, I mean, look at with Bryce Young too when they signed Adam Thielen. You can compare it to that, but yeah, the receiver room definitely needs a little bit more of a jolt. You know, I know one of our friends has made jokes about veteran receivers going to Tennessee and basically their career ends there. But yeah, you hope that this pans out for them. Obviously, they did once have a very good receiver that they traded when he was, I think, 25, and that was AJ Brown, and kind of lost people their jobs because it still didn't make sense. I
Mhm.
mean, it made sense for the Eagles, but didn't make sense for
Everything makes
the
sense for the Eagles.
yeah. Made sense for the Eagles. Didn't make sense for the Titans. They got Treylon Burks, and he really hasn't done much at the NFL level. I don't even think he's on the team anymore. So you hope with this pick, you got the young quarterback, and you hope that this is a rapport that could build for years to come. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
All right, now we enter the fifth round. Like we said, we're not going to talk about Shador Sanders. We already did for so long. If you want to go back to the beginning of the episode, you can. Going into some players now, Jaden Blue out of Texas, he goes to the Dallas Cowboys. He obviously had a huge combine as he ran a super fast combine. Not only that, it kind of seems to me like after the whole Ezekiel Elliott thing with Dallas, they kind of have this like I don't know worry about making any commitment to running backs. We know they made a move for Devontae Williams. It wasn't really like a move. There wasn't that much invested in it. They go Jaden Blue as well. I thought Rico Dowdle was a little more solid than people would have expected last year. But again, this team really just has a lack of commitment to running back, it feels like.
Yeah, I think they had like a certain amount of years with, prime Zeke because that was when the offensive line was still really good. So obviously that worked. That was still the offensive line that DeMarco Murray ran behind too. And then obviously as Zeke got older, that line started to decline and you saw guys leave and retire. So yeah, it's a different Dallas Cowboys team than what we saw back when Zeke and Dak bursted onto the scene. But yeah, I mean, this was a position that, they needed to address. I feel like I know they brought in a couple of veterans, but they brought in Miles Sanders, they brought in Javonte Williams, and I think they still have Deuce Vaughn on the team, but he hasn't really done anything. So I don't have a problem with this pick. The Cowboys last year with Dowdle wasn't that bad, but we've seen the Cowboys run the football more effectively in years past. So
Mhm.
you're hoping maybe with Jaden Blue that changes.
Next up, we got Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame. He goes to the Panthers. I feel like he was one of the best tight ends in the country. I thought they got a ton of value. Just what I was saying about the Jets. Like the Jets took a tight end really early, and I feel like Mitchell Evans is closer to Mason Taylor than Mason Taylor is to Tyler Warren or Colson Loveland. They're trying to help out Bryce Young as much as they could. I really like this pick. How do you feel about Panthers going tight end?
Yeah, I mean, again, adds another pass catcher to the offense. They want to put Bryce Young in a good situation. I don't have a problem with it.
Next up, we go Denzel Burks, Ohio State. He goes to the Cardinals. I actually thought he was one of the best players and leaders for Ohio State their last two seasons. I thought he was almost locked down. I mean, there were some games that were questionable, but again, he was going up against top talent. They go double cornerback, but I actually love it. I think Denzel Burks is a steal at this position. And I think, again, Will Johnson, we'll see if he's going to be a steal, but they need to go defense. They addressed it. And I think they got two pretty solid corners at their value.
Yeah, it's interesting that they have a Big Ten rivalry opposite sides of each other there with Will Johnson and Denzel Burke. But again, Cardinals defensive side of the ball was not great last year, and you are bolstering your secondary. You hope so. I like that for them.
All right, next up, we go into the sixth round. There's some notable guys here. Ollie Gordon, he had a huge drop off. Obviously, a lot of people were expecting him to be a first rounder going into last year. He won the Doak Walker Award, which goes to the best running back the year before last. He kind of slowed down a little bit. He drops all the way to the sixth round to the Dolphins. It seems like the Dolphins lately have been going a lot of running back by committee. I currently don't like the running back they have. I've said that time and time again, even though a lot of people do love him. But I feel like they do go running back like every year. They went Jalen Wright last year, Ollie Gordon. Like they keep investing in running backs. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Jalen Wright, Devon Achan, who you're a big fan of, like you said. So yeah, I mean, I feel like probably could have addressed another position, maybe on defense, but coming off of a year, Let's see, 880 rushing yards, 13 touchdowns. You're just adding to that running back room, running back committee, like you said. There are some injury concerns with that running back room because Atron, when he is healthy, he shows you that he's a good running back, but he's just had a problem with staying on the field. So you're adding insurance to that position.
All right. Next up, Will Howard. He goes to the Steelers. They take a quarterback in the 6th round. Not what everybody was expecting when they were going to take a quarterback. Our Steelers friend actually loved this pick, which is like normally how things go. Like I mentioned him, when you think they made a great pick, he thinks it was horrible. When you think it's horrible, he thinks it's great. I don't think this pick's horrible at all. I mean, it's a 6th round. You're taking a quarterback. You're taking a quarterback that won in the national championship. And again, it's with a pick that's so late. The crazy thing is, with the quarterback they have roster right now, they could be starting a 6th round quarterback at some point this
It's
year.
definitely possible. Unless it's between Skylar Thompson and Mason Rudolph, because Skylar Thompson is the other quarterback on the roster.
I don't think Will Howard, again, I don't think he's great, but I don't think he deserved also as much flack as he was getting. Again, he did, Ohio State did win a national championship and they were super talented, but again, he does play the most important position on the team and he did make it happen. Um, yeah, I don't think it's a bad spot where they took him, but this is not where I was expecting the Steelers to take a quarterback in this draft.
Yeah, I do agree. I think they picked him at the right time. It's weird. Like the two games, like prior to the two games that, well, one of them we saw in person. The other game I watched was the Michigan Ohio State game, and he did not play well in that either. I was not impressed. But then when we got to the playoffs and the national championship game, he played really well,
Yeah,
and he made some big throws in those games and big moments.
definitely.
So I was like, maybe Will Howard could possibly, if he gets in the right situation, maybe he doesn't start right away. Again, weak quarterback class. Maybe he could turn into a solid starter. Maybe. Because he was playing in such big moments. Now, like you said, Ohio State is one of the, won the national championship, obviously. And, they have a loaded team, but, maybe in this situation where he's not going to start right away, you hope, uh, maybe he can grow into a solid starter. Maybe. And maybe the Steelers are not done adding to that quarterback room because there's a guy that's out in California that's still deciding on whether he wants to play or retire. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Um, so yeah, definitely not the position we were thinking that the Steelers were going to take a quarterback, but they did come away with one quarterback, and I think for the most part, that's pretty much it. I don't really want to get into pretty much anybody in the 7th round. This is going on 2 hours. Anything else you have to add for this draft?
I guess I thought what was interesting towards the end of the 6th round that the Raiders took two quarterbacks. They took the one from Montana State, Tommy Mellott, I think, and then Cam Miller from North Dakota State. I thought that was interesting that they did that. But other
Bro,
than that, I
bro, with
mean,
the thing for Tommy Mellott, at least like what I'm looking on, they have him marked as a receiver, even though he did play quarterback.
oh, so actually, wait, so yeah, maybe one of them switches, I guess. But I did think that was interesting. But if you said one of them is going to switch, then I guess that makes sense. But
I have no idea. I didn't watch much Montana State.
yeah. Well, that was the only thing that I thought was interesting in the later rounds. Was just that the Raiders they finally took quarterbacks, and they were both in the 6th round, and the Chargers took a safety in between those two picks. But
Yeah,
um,
I another couple of things I thought was interesting, like the Buccaneers go Tez Johnson, which is one of my favorite players in college football. It kind of sucks. I don't think I'm ever going to see him because that receiving group is so loaded. When you talk about Mike Evans, Emeka Buka, Chris Godwin, McMillan. So yeah, that kind of sucked. And then I also thought Quinn Ewers was very interesting as well to the Dolphins. A guy again that was like a complete like blue chip prospect out of high school and just having insurance for Tua. And like if you get drafted to the Dolphins, you never know. You could always that's one of those teams where you could always
yeah,
play as well.
that's definitely good for him because I mean, hopefully, if he's the backup, I mean, you see better quarterback play if he has to come in than what they've gotten with Skylar Thompson, and then last year was Tyler Huntley. So, and I think even Tim Boyle had to come in at one point too. So, yeah, you never know with Tua's injury history. You're in a good system. So,
All right. So I'm pretty sure that wraps up this basically full draft recap right when the draft ended. Anything else you got to say?
No, I was happy with what the Giants did, and hopefully that translates on the field. But it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. But I do appreciate, I appreciate you having me on, and we had a little bit of a reunion of our podcast. So it was nice to discuss the draft with you.
For sure, and I definitely appreciate you hanging out for 2 hours.
Well,
um,
let's not forget we did, do a show with the draft going on live one year. So I'm used to
I
it.
forgot about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, when we used to do shows, they were like very long. Definitely not what
Yeah.
I do now, but yeah, I definitely wanted to mix up the end because my episodes are always usually pretty short. But yeah, so that wraps up this draft episode. Getting it out to you guys right after the draft ends.